Hey guys, so today I wanted to explain how I set grades on a model railroad. With this particular model railroad, I like to make sure that first and foremost, when I'm building the bench work and setting everything up, it's all set level. So I don't know if you can see real well or not, but you can see I've got leg adjusters on all of the legs. And then I go through and I actually physically level the layout. Now, it doesn't seem like it's really important, but when you get to this point where you're setting the grades for your track, it really does become important. So what I'm going to show you here is a real quick one. With this particular line, I'm looking at this one right here, which is the third one from the back. So it says 7.2 here at this joint, 6.7 at this joint. I know I have a benchwork cross member that crosses about here. So I'm going to make this 7 inches. So I'm going to go over here and find the same thing in real life. Real life, it's about there. I want to make this 7 inches. So 7 inches means it's 7 inches above 0. So 0 in this case is going to be the benchwork framing. So from the benchwork framing to the bottom of your subroad bed is going to be 7 inches. Now, why is that? Because your actual 0 height, this down here, is a 1/2 inch above, but it's the same thickness as the subroad bed for everything else in the layout. So you can go from top of the subroad bed to top of subroad bed, or you can go from bottom to bottom. In this case, going from bottom to bottom is easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut a piece of material here that's, it's my typical benchwork material. So it's 3.5 inches tall. In this case, it's just a scrap, so it's only about 6 inches long. But I'm going to cut something that's a little bit longer. So I'm going to take my height, whatever it may be. Let's say this is, 7 inches here. And then I'm going to add the distance of my benchwork frame. So in actuality, what I'm going to end up doing is instead of cutting 7 inches, I'm actually going to cut 7, 8, 9, 10 and a half. So I'm going to cut one that's at 10.5 inches. So you'll see here, so I've got my benchwork frame height is 3.5 inches. And then the height I want this grade set to is at 7 inches. So I know if I bump this up against my benchwork, that from the top of my benchwork to the bottom of my subroad bed is going to be exactly 7 inches. Okay, so now I'm underneath the benchwork. And with all my projects, I've got 1-inch wiring holes rounded off. Everything looks great and pretty. Down here, I've got my box of screws. And I got my drill. So I'm going to go ahead and take some screws here. And this is the same piece that I had before. I did narrow it down just a little bit off camera. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set this so it's perfectly flush with the bottom of the benchwork. And it's as simple as that. I'm just going to stick a couple screws in it. And call it done. Okay, so we're back here up on top. We're going to go ahead and put a screw in this riser. Now, you'll notice I tightened it up, which flattens it out. I'm going to loosen it back up just a little bit. So now it's wiggling just a little bit. And now, this is where the fun begins. Because over here, I've got myself a straight edge, just a piece of plywood. I'm going to go ahead and go from here to here. So I know this fixed point is where it's supposed to be. And I know this point is where it's supposed to be. But you'll notice the middle is kind of drooping a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and stick a clamp in here, hold this up in place in a couple spots. Now it doesn't matter if it comes in the center or if it wiggles around a little bit. The main thing is that it stays flat. So I'm gonna go ahead and clamp that in place. So now I know that this ramp is exactly where it needs to be in relation to everything else. So now the same thing I just did with the riser over there, I can just go underneath and put anything in place. It doesn't matter if it matches the perfect length or not. It can be short, it can be long. I can use whatever scrap I got on hand. The important part is that I screw it in place down on the benchwork, and it's just bumping the top. So I'm not going to worry about securing the very top of it at the moment. I'm just going to get that bottom piece in place. Okay, so here we are back underneath the layout again. And we're going to start installing the rest of our risers. Now, in this case, we don't have to worry about perfection. We're just going to stick it underneath there and pop a screw in it. And then we're going to make sure it's square. Now, in my case, I've got this nice little Woodpecker's 3.5-inch speed square. Kind of expensive though. This thing was about $80. So, let's show you what I started building layouts. This is just a generic little speed square that I got at Home Depot. Looked just like this. And then I just cut it down. So, and actually it happened by accident because I actually broke it. And then had, wait a minute, that works pretty good. So I kept it. So in this case, just put it up here, make sure it's square. Now the reason why you're squaring this to the benchwork is we already know the benchwork's square and level. We want to make sure that this riser is level as well, so that your track work is level left to right. If your track work's not level left to right, then you could have derailing issues and other issues with your trains. And well, let's try and avoid that. So you'll notice that this one is long. It sticks down below the layout a couple inches. Now, if you don't care, you can obviously just leave it that way. Otherwise, you can come back with either a jigsaw or one of those little vibrating multi-tools and just go ahead and cut it off flush with your benchwork. And again, as we did with the other one, once you get this secured, and you can actually go down the line and do all of them, next 3 or 4, everywhere you've got that 1x4 held on by the clamps, you can go ahead and install those, and then when you get done, you can go up top and put all the screws in at once. Okay, so here we are back on top again. I'm going to go ahead and pull my clamps off. Keep in mind, you don't actually have to use clamps. You can actually just put some pocket screws in here, or even screw it from the underside. Whatever works for you. I mean, you don't have to spend a lot of money for model railroading, contrary to popular belief. Okay, so I've got this out of the way now. I'm going to go ahead and grab my trusty drill and go ahead and start putting some screws in. And it's simple as that, really. Now my preference is usually go underneath the track because then they disappear. They don't mess with your scenery, etc. In this particular case, there's 2 risers here because this benchwork is actually going to get cut right here. It's going to become a seam, and that's going to allow the client, once he gets it to his home, which is back in Illinois and I'm down here in Florida, to go ahead and just simply bolt his modules together and be ready to rock and roll. So with that said, that's the quick and dirty on how to set grades. Now keep in mind that, for a layout of this size and this complexity, it's going to take you a couple hours. I've got about 4 hours into it right now. I'll probably have another 2 before I'm done. But, for 5 or 6 hours to get your grades all perfectly set and, balanced out the way they need to be so everything is reliable, so you have nice, smooth running trains. It's worth a little bit of extra effort to go ahead and level out your benchwork. It saves a lot of time in the end. So you spend 5 minutes in the beginning when all the benchwork's flat anyway, there's nothing on top. And you go ahead and level it all off. And then you can just simply measure everything else to the benchwork, and it makes it nice and simple. So that said, this is another video from modelrailroadbenchwork.com. If you like these and want to see more, please like and subscribe. Doesn't mean much to you, but it means a lot to me. Thanks. Bye.